Good morning. I'm Jean Pruitt. I'm the president and CEO of the Independent Film and Television Alliance, the trade association that represents independent film and distribution companies around the world. And I'd like to welcome all of you to the very first webinar in our IFTA Connects program, which is a program we've put together to bring thought leaders and experts together to talk about today's issues for the film industry and the independent industry specifically, and to make that programming available to essentially everybody in our universe that we connect to. And so I'm glad to see so many IFTA members joining, but I'm also welcoming all of you who we all work with daily, but who are not normally part of our webinar environment. Today, we're welcoming as a speaker, Schuyler Moore. Schuyler is a partner at the law firm based in Los Angeles of Greenberg Glusker. He is well known throughout our membership and throughout the industry as being one of the leading tax and financing practitioners. Many of our IFTA members cite him to explain why they're doing what they're doing. I know from personal experience that the studios do that as well. I have read his articles. He writes frequently for Forbes. He's written one of the leading textbooks on taxation of the entertainment industry, as well as a book on financing, which is in its now 4th edition, called The Biz, that lays out in very easy to understand and practical terms how financing happens in our sector of the industry. I personally have always regarded Sky as a thorn in my side, well respected. I always want to know what he has to say, even if sometimes I wish he would say it not quite so publicly when he doesn't agree with me. But I have always found that he is better able than almost anybody to pierce through the verbiage and the sort of hoopla surrounding not only taxation, but the way taxation affects the way we all have to do business in this industry. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to him to do his always best to walk us through how to do financing of content in the VOD environment. With that, Sky, over to you.
There we go. Jean, thank you so much. A wonderful introduction, and glad to be here. And a hello to a lot of friends, colleagues, and former students that I saw that I've received emails from various people that say, hey, I'll be there. So that's nice to see everybody. So today I want to talk about financing in a VOD world, which has, video on demand has just turned our financing world upside down. In a prior world, we would classically go to the AFM and to Cannes and to the film markets, pre-sale territory by territory, drag the contracts home, get a bank to loan against it, get a completion guarantee, and that's how we finance films. And now that is dwindling. I wouldn't say give up all hope, but it's is a fraction of what it used to be. So how do you finance films in a VOD world? And my short answer is, in general, you sell to a VOD company or you go hungry. And I recommend to my clients always do it in advance. Don't make the film first and then go to the VOD company. They want to feel vested. They want to feel that they're part of the creative process. And if you show up with the film done, you're much less likely to get it. So the short answer is get on your hands and knees and go beg to the VOD companies. Now, how do you do that? The answer is, the short answer is you find what I call the anointed ones. Every VOD company has producers that they trust and will take their calls and take their pitches. And I just tell all clients, fortunately, I have some of those anointed ones as clients, so they can easily get a project going at a Netflix or Amazon. But if you're not one of the anointed ones, partner with somebody who is. It's easy to figure out who they are. Just look at the credits on the content that's on the website. and if you're into whatever whether you're doing feature films or horror or series, just see who are the producers of that content for that streamer and partner with them and give them 50% of the profits, and you'll be happy to do that, because that at least will get you a foot at the table and will get you be able to sell your product, and someone at the network will, at the streamer will take your call. The alternative, of course, is to show up after you've made your film and to sell it to the streamer afterwards. But that's much harder. I promise you, that's just much harder. And the deals at the streamers it's fixed. You'll get a fixed fee. It's a percentage of the budget. On a happy day, depending on how you massage the budget and producer fees and other fun things, if you're creative, you can get it up to 50% premium on the. So you'll be able to sell your film for 150% of what you made it for. The margins are coming down. And in a streamer world, what they want is to pay a 10% margin. So somewhere between 10 and 50% premium on the budget is what you should be hoping to get. There is no back end. It's a walk away. And then the question is financing. And there's two different models for the streamers. Model one is that they cash flow production. That makes life easy. You just show up and they write you checks as you go, and you make your film, and life is beautiful. That's definitely the easiest. The other model that they use is to pay on delivery, and where they give you the equivalent of a minimum guarantee for a worldwide deal, and you then wander off to a bank and ask for their specialized lenders that do this, not just banks, and you bank that contract. And usually you need a completion guarantee, and it's like the old days, except it's like you're doing a studio, like a negative pickup at a studio, but you're doing a negative pickup now with a streamer. And so, but those are more complex. You will need a bank. You typically need a completion guarantee. The premiums are about the same, 10 to 50%. And and life is beautiful if you can do it that way. So that's the classic model, and absolutely, gangbusters. Right now, there's a huge competition between the streamers. So you've got way too many streamers that a lot will not survive. They're all competing. It's obviously going to boil down to a few big ones that have the content, Netflix being one, Disney being another, Apple, Amazon. Those are going to be probably the big ones that survive. A lot of the smaller ones will not, because customers want to be able to log on to a site and get the most content possible. So, but as the streamers whittle down, the competition will go down, and the premiums will go down. So now is a good time, but for the recent stock market crash, which is definitely hurting Netflix significantly, because they were really overpaying. So prices are Netflix in particular has got to bring their prices down to align with reality of the stock market. So anyway, that's kind of one big source of financing. That's what's really out there these days. That's the main one. But let's go through all the others, because there's still everything else is viable. And so let's go down it. Another tried and true way is just equity from investors, and that will back your film, back development, back production. And so let's go through the issues that come up. Who are how do you find them? How do you find investors? I get that all the time. And the answer is that start with friends and family. That's for startup capital. That's what most people do. And then contacts. You say, well, I know somebody and they know somebody, and you keep calling and just don't give up, man. Just got to keep on it. I had one client that ended up starting off in the LA and ended up wandering through the Middle East, and came back with $10 million from Omar Gaddafi. And I kid you not, when he was leading Libya. And we were about to raise another 100 million from him before he was summarily executed. So that was bad timing. We were literally getting on an airplane, but my client just ran his contacts and just tried and didn't give up and called people. So that's one viable approach. Who's out there? Finders. There's a lot of people out there, and you've got to be careful. A lot of people will want a commission for helping you for raising financing. Do not pay them in advance. All right. Never, ever, ever, not a dime, not expenses, not nothing. Do anybody offer to whatever they offer one up front, tell them you'll pay it twice. You'll pay it double when they show up with money. And that will separate the wheat from the chaff, because there's way too many schemers and dreamers who don't know, either trying to defraud you or think that they know what they're doing and really don't. So, but there are people that do have contacts, and there are people that can help financing, and it's worth paying them a commission if they close, but never, not even a dime in advance. The one thing to look out for, these guys are called finders, and the one thing to look out for is the securities laws. The SEC position is that you can't pay a finder to raise financing. That I believe is too aggressive a position. The case law says, as long as a finder says, Joe, meet Harry and you guys go talk. They're allowed to do that under the securities laws, under the case law. They are not allowed to, though, say, Joe, meet Harry, and oh, by the way, Harry's got a wonderful film project and you really should invest. They're not supposed to solicit in the sense of pitching the project. And as long as if they do that, they need a broker-dealer license. So that's the one thing to look out for. Finders are supposed to make introductions. They're not supposed to pitch the project. But they're viable sources. Next is online websites called crowdfunding sources, and there's lots of them. All right, so I don't even need to list them there. You can go on Google and just go film crowdfunding sites, and you will find tons. They are viable. But with two caveats. One is, don't pay anything up front. Don't commit to give credits and fees or back ends unless they show up with financing. And because some of them are asked for upfront stuff, and you just never do that. And the second comment is, do not use them for any investor. Investors have to be what are called accredited investors, and accredited investors means they have over $1 million of net worth, excluding their home. And then when we get to the securities, I'll discuss securities laws, but that will make your life a whole lot easier if you just only take accredited investors. Some crowdfunding sites take any investors, and that will get you in trouble. I guarantee you that will get you in trouble. Another way to raise financing, equity financing, is advertise. And I am surprised that I have not seen advertisements in the trades or other places for someone doing an equity raise. And you're allowed to do that. For the last 5 years, we've been allowed to do advertising. There's a bit of strings that go with it. The one string is you must make sure that everybody's accredited investor. That's more than $1 million net worth, excluding their home. And you have to be able to prove it. You have to get their tax return or an accountant or a lawyer to confirm, to certify that they are accredited. But that's not that hard. And so I am surprised that more people don't do advertising. Another source of equity financing is advertisers. And I have financed entire budgets of films with using advertisers. We did a film called Goal, which was a soccer film, where we got Adidas to finance literally 100% of 3 films. And I've got another film going right now that is being financed by a large consumer product company. And the pitch, of course, is their content will be in the film, will be portrayed in the film. And then you can build around it sponsorships and some things. The trick with first of all, think Transformers and Lego. If you want to think of successful films that have been financed with advertising, it works. Like there's no reason why it can't work. So obviously, Lego was in heaven with Lego, and Transformers is having a wonderful time with Transformers. So advertising can work. It doesn't just necessarily ruin a film. However, when they put in significant equity, they tend to want to turn it into a commercial, and that is a little. You've got to be you've got to get them to. you've got to warn them to back off a bit, because you say, look, you're ruining the film by just turning it into one big commercial. And you also run into a lot of difficulties with talent that you have to, when the advertiser wants to take the talent and use them in effectively commercials, they say they're promoting the film, but not really, or they want the talent to show up and do other things. That gets tricky, and obviously it gets more expensive for that. You have to pay the talent more. So, but advertisers are a tremendous source of equity. I mean, it's an untapped, because they've been wiped out of network television, because no one's watching it. They need to get integrated into the content, and films is absolutely a great way. All right, what are the incentives for equity investors to invest in a film? Well, one incentive you can claim is profit, but that's, the truth is most films lose money. And when I do an offering, I don't even attach projections that show a profit. I don't even bother, because if you always see these charts where the money's going, this is the projection. The projection is going to be endless profits and life is beautiful. And that's just nonsense, because what'll happen is you'll get me on the stand as the expert witness for the defense saying, for the plaintiff really, saying the average film loses money. So these projections were wrong to start with. So I don't even attach projections. What you pitch is the sexiness of the industry. And people just love credits. The one thing I sell is credits. Sometimes I feel like I'm a credit broker. Like I can get you on for $5 million, and I kid you not, I can get you a main title, executive producer credit on a big film, and I can sell in credits, and I can sell co-production credits, and I have clients that just do this. They raise money by selling credits, and they raise a lot, and because people just love credits. The other thing you're selling is the sexiness of the industry. Hey, oh my God, you get to go on set, and you get to meet whoever, and you get to go to the premiere, and you'll go to the after party, and investors love that stuff, and that's really why they're investing in the film industry. It's certainly not for money, and it's not for profits. It's because it's fun, and they want to brag about their credits, and they want to go to the parties, and they want to have fun. So that's what I pitch, and I pitch anything I can other than the economics of the industry. I try to stay as far away from that as I can, because in particularly outside the VOD world, most films lose money. How do you structure your equity investments? There's two ways, and the bad way, which I see all the time, which drives me insane, are these investment contracts. And it's a piece of paper that says you invest money and you will get a share of profits. Those are nutty. They are unsecured contractual promises to pay, and the producer that receives the cash is taxed right up front because they're getting cash, and that's income, and it's not equity. It's equity has to be, there's only two kinds of equity: an investment in a LLC, like a membership interest in an LLC, or a loan, or stock in a corporation, equity in an LLC, and a loan, of course, is separately non-taxable. But if you just do an investment contract, whoever receives the cash is taxed. The person who's investing has basically no rights, has no security, and has no real remedy other than to sue if they're not paid. So the proper way to do this is as an LLC, where the investors become members of the LLC, and the rights and obligations are clear. The producer's not taxed when the money comes in; it's tax-free. It's because it's equity investment in an LLC, and the investors now have an equity ownership in the LLC. They have rights and obligations that are established by law, and it is without question the best way to go. And the tax consequences are clear. The withholding obligations are clear, and so please, dear God, do LLCs. Don't do these dumb investment contracts. Anytime you raise equity, anytime you are triggering the securities laws, you are issuing a security by definition, and you must comply with the securities laws. And there's two things to look out for. One is that you must find an exemption from registration of your offering. Otherwise, you have to register, and it's like $1 million to actually do it. So you must find an exemption. And the big exemption is that all your investors must be accredited investors. All of them must be accredited investors, which means they must have a net worth in excess of $1 million, excluding their home. And they have to state that that's the case, and on a subscription agreement that says, I am an accredited investor because I meet this requirement. And if you advertise that, you have to actually get their tax return or accountant or lawyer to confirm that that's the case. So that's step one. Step two is, in all cases, even if they're all accredited, you always have to disclose all material facts of the offering. And the way you normally do that is with a private placement memorandum that spells out the risks and the facts and your background and your plan and the budget and your cast and your distribution plan. And the normal way to do it is a private placement memorandum, which doesn't have to be long, can be pretty short, but one way or another, you must disclose all material facts, even if you're exempt from registration. And that goes for all securities offerings. And I see clients trip up on this all the time. They raise money from investors, they do a stupid investment contract, they don't think about the securities laws. And when the things go bad, the first thing that's going to happen is they're going to receive a complaint in the mail or personal service that says you're being sued for violation of the securities laws, and you are personally liable for repaying the investor. So if the film loses money, you as the promoter are now personally liable for return of everybody's money. Now, that's not a happy day. And it can get worse than that. I've had clients who have been criminally prosecuted for violating the securities laws, because it is a criminal offense. And they show up, they went off and they did an offering without talking to me. Things went bad. Turns out, of course, that they didn't comply with the securities laws, and they were criminally prosecuted. So please, dear God, comply with the securities laws. One of the requirements is you have to file a Form D with the SEC, which simply says, I'm doing an offering and I'm selling it all to accredited investors, and here are the facts, and here's how much I'm raising. But it's very important to file that Form D with the SEC. We have talked about that it is still viable, although less so, to do pre-sales on a country by country basis. And that is the old model. It's still there. Sales agent goes to Cannes, goes to the AFM, goes to Toronto, goes to the foreign distributors, pre-sells a film on a country by country basis. The producer then brings those contracts back to a bank, excuse me, gives them to a bank. Bank says, where's your completion guarantee? So you go get a completion guarantee and you finance the film. The lender gives you the money. You produce the film, you deliver it to the distributors, they hopefully pay, and you make your film. The two big tricks is that those sales are way down. It is very hard to cover your budget these days with pre-sales, very hard, particularly the US sale, because you might sell foreign for 40%, 30% of your budget, but now what? That's, you have this huge gap, and it's very hard to get a US pre-sale, very hard. So that's really why those are so down, because the sale typically ends up going to a streamer, and the streamers typically want worldwide. And I've had several times where I had a film go off in one direction, doing foreign pre-sales. Then we went back to the US sale. The streamer said, I want worldwide, and we had to undo all the foreign sales. So now we had to pay off the foreign distributors to get them out of their contracts. So they made money without even putting up money, because we had to buy them out. So that's why it's best to start with your US sale and see if they want worldwide, which is typically the case. But the per country sales, it's still out there, and it is a viable method for film financing. Another source of financing, very important, is tax subsidies. And those are production incentives for local production. The US has it on a state by state level. For example, Louisiana, Georgia, now New Jersey, New York, Connecticut, New Mexico, California to some extent, but California is really for the studios, not the independents. And in essence, what it is if you produce in that locality, then they will, typically on completion, they will give you tax credits that you then sell or monetize or borrow. Somebody buys them, borrows, loans against them, and you monetize your you get cash fundamentally by the state gives you tax credits and then you sell them, is fundamentally what's happening. And in a perfect world, you can raise up to 25% of your budget by doing this. And they're tricky. They can be complex. You have to be careful as to what goes into the base for calculating the percentage. Sometimes costs outside the state can qualify. Sometimes they can't. So you have to be careful on the state. And the processes can be complete. Some states stop the program in midstream because they run out of money. That has happened numerous times. But in a perfect world, if it can raise up to 25% of your budget. Now that's a big piece. So you've got to keep your eye on that. Almost for every production has their eye on local tax subsidies. It's not just state. It also is many foreign countries have subsidies of different types. Canada has production subsidies. UK, Germany, Australia. Sometimes in Europe, it's done under co-production treaties, where if you shoot in two different countries, they each give you benefits. Sometimes it's a quota benefit because in Europe, television broadcasters have a quota that they have to put on a certain percentage of European content. And so sometimes the subsidy is in the form of increased sales because you meet the quota requirements to sell to the broadcasters in those countries. And those are typically done under co-production treaties where you trigger the meeting the requirements in several countries. If in a perfect world, you do 3 countries and increase the sales in 3 countries. But some countries have direct subsidies where they just pay you cash during production if you shoot there. So always keep your eye on production subsidies. They can be an absolute tremendous source of financing. Another source of financing these days is using the blockchain. I'm going to call it broadly NFT. Let's start with NFTs. NFTs are digital clips that are sold on the blockchain that give the purchaser of the NFT ownership in some digital content, not the copyright to it, but the kind of, it's like owning a painting, except you're owning a digital painting. And when you buy a painting, you don't own the copyright to it. You end up owning basically the right to display it. NFTs for films, I've seen budgets for films be financed by the pre-sale of NFTs, where and in particular, it was an animated film where they did the animation. They took the characters that they were going to make the film with and sold NFTs of the characters, and actually by doing that raised enough money to make the film itself. So that was remarkable. And and again, the way it works, it's on the blockchain. What you're really doing is buying a link to a location where that digital content exists, and you're not buying the copyright. People are all confused by this, but you're not buying the copyright to the content. You are simply buying bragging rights that you own this unique token, digital token, that represents your ownership of that particular link to that content. And this is what's going, it's going on, with Bored Apes and dead cats and God knows what. Everyone's selling NFTs of everything. But you can raise financing for a film by doing that. If you don't have the content existing, you can sell what are called utility tokens. And utility tokens are digital. Think of it as a ticket to then later trade in for something relating to the film, in particular for later NFTs. So what you can do is you can sell utility tokens in advance that give the people the right to buy a NFT when the film is completed, or they can have the right to buy a copy of the film, or a ticket to a ticket to go see the film, or some goodie that they later can trade that utility token in for. and people are like, you know, also once you have a film that's made, I mean, the studios are having a party with this because they can take clips from old films and sell them on the internet as NFTs and sell. And so, you know, so you could take a clip, make perhaps 100, say we're going to make 100 NFTs. And so you have the bragging right to say that you own, you know, an item 1 or 2 of an NFT of, I'll pick one, Terminator, you know, where Schwarzenegger says, "I'll be back." You could take that clip, sell it as an NFT, and they're selling them for lots and lots of money. One of the catches there, if you use a character, you must go back to that character and get their permission and pay them separate compensation to use that NFT to use them. And I believe this comes under clip rights. So the question, when I go through these contracts to say who can do what, the question becomes, who has clip rights to those old films? And that becomes really the key question. And under the SAG rules, you have to pay, when you go back and do this, you have to go pay them separate compensation. So usually a separate negotiation after the film is done. The one thing well, several things to think about with NFTs and utility tokens. One is, boy, the market is sure crashing recently. I was watching charts, and usually they're traded with a coin called Ethereum, and Ethereum has just crashed recently in like 50% in the last week or two. So I've never understood NFTs in terms of why anyone would pay for them. And I think the rest of the world is coming to that conclusion too, because the prices are going way down now. So that's, you know, issue one is, are they still a commercially viable way to raise money? Right now they are, because I do have clients that are doing it. And we have clients that are selling everything in the world as NFTs. And the second issue to look out for is the securities laws. And the SEC has opened a project to take the position. They are looking hard at whether NFTs and utility tokens are securities. And this started with looking at whether digital coins are securities. And they're going after, in particular, a company called Ripple, which issued a coin called XRP. Everyone's keeping their eye on that. And it does not meet the traditional definition of security, but the SEC is very concerned about it. And they just hired 20 people to go and they've issued a number of subpoenas to investigate whether NFTs and utility tokens are securities. In my humble view, the current definition of security will have to get expanded to include them, because these need to be regulated. And in particular, they need to have full disclosure. When we have clients that do this, I tell them, you've got to comply with the securities laws. And in particular, you've got to do full disclosure of all material facts as though you were doing a securities. And it's like a small PPM. And in the NFT world, that's typically called a white paper. And you just have to make sure that you do full disclosure. The problem with all of them is that securities have to be issued to accredited investors. And by definition, people want to trade these. And you're not allowed to trade to non-accredited investors. And so that's one of the issues. That's a big issue that's come up. Another source of financing in this world is is that you're going to hear about all the time is Section 181. And that is a federal deduction for the cost of producing a film. It is not a credit. People often mistake the two. Deduction is not the same as a credit. So if you spend $100 on making a film in the United States, you're allowed to deduct that cost. But if the film loses money, you lose your money. And so, yes, you get to deduct the $100. You might save $50 of taxes, but if the film loses money, you've lost 100. So maybe the net cost to you is 50 because you spent 100, you save 50 of taxes. But it's not. Some people think, oh, I've got a credit of 100. No, that's not how it works. To take the deduction, you can. It's a very special kind of loss. It's called a passive loss, and it can only be used against certain types of income. And most of the income is rent from real property and income from an active trade or business that you do not participate in. This is called passive income. And so the big problem with 181 is that the deduction can only be used against certain categories of income, and usually only very wealthy investors have that type of income. And so it really limits Section 181 in a very significant way. The other comment on 181 is it's not that great a deduction because yes, you can deduct it during production, but for 181, you're allowed to deduct the cost of the film when you release it. There's now Section 168K that says when you release a film, you can deduct it. So generally, 181 only accelerates the deduction by 1 year. I have seen there are companies out there that treat 181 as though it was a source of financing for films by leveraging it up and by getting investors and then borrowing against that. And they tell the investor, by putting up only $10, we will give you $100 of deductions. That is fraud. There is no question about it. What they are doing is committing fraud, and you should have nothing to do with it, at least on the investor side. If anyone pitches that to you, on the recipient side, they show up with money, great. You just don't want to ask questions about what they're doing because you don't want to get your fingerprints on whatever they're doing. You're allowed to take their money, but be aware that these leveraged 181 deals are without question fraud. The investors have to be personally liable on the debt. None of it makes sense. The interest expense far exceeds the benefit of the 1 year deferral, and it's ridiculous. I want to tell you a few the sponsorship part of the program, and now a note from our sponsor. Jean mentioned it earlier. If you don't have it, you should get my book, The Biz. It's now in its 5th edition. So Jean has the old edition, which is 4th. The new one says it's in a digital world. It refers to the business, financial, and legal aspects of the film industry in a digital world. Everything I've talked about today is talked about in great length in the book. It's on Amazon. It's cheap. And another source of education for you, I have a whole series of Forbes articles. I do one a month, and they go back for years. And you can pick almost any topic. I've written on anything that comes to mind, and from COVID to obviously VOD and artificial intelligence and what's coming. So let me end this program with I'm going to give you first on raising financing. The comment I would make to you on raising financing is Churchill's refrain after World War II, where he was asked what he did, and he said, what his advice. And his advice was, never give in, never, never, never. my successful clients that raise financing just are the Terminator. They don't give up. They just keep going. And if one door closes, they go after the next one. They don't get disappointed. They, again, I had one ended up with Gaddafi in Libya. I got one had got nowhere, but now is one of the anointed ones at Netflix, so he can get anything sold. They just never give up. So I would say that to everybody. Just hold on to it and keep trying. As a last comment to you, to keep your eye on the future and what you should be doing, I want to give you a few suggestions. If you're a new producer, partner with somebody that is already an established producer. That's partner with somebody so that someone will take your calls. Comment 2, keep your eye on artificial intelligence. I'm telling you now that within several years, films will be made by artificial intelligence, and whoever can get behind this and be the ones who are backing it, creating it, understand it. Because from the artificial intelligence can write scripts, it can produce content, it can choreograph, it can imitate characters. There's no question that that's where the world is going. And you can see it on YouTube right now. If you research some terms, you will see the phenomenal ability of artificial intelligence. Next is the metaverse. The metaverse is coming, and it is. And if you want to create content and sell it, boy, create content for the metaverse, because there's going to be a huge demand. I've seen money being thrown around right now at just so people have people that have any IP at all are getting thrown money to try to commit it to put it in the metaverse, and that's it's obviously a different content creation. So get ahead of the curve beyond that, and then third is think advertise for sources of financing. Boy, think advertisers, because they're hungry. They got money to burn, and they're glad to back content that will have some, that portray their content in some way. So if you can combine those three, boy, you're going to be ahead of the curve and head of the charge. And with that, I am glad to take questions, and I see that I've got a bunch. So let me just I will take some questions at this time. Okay, let me see what the truth. One, is it true for all VOD platforms that they would rather see pitches than finished product? Yes, VOD platforms much rather see pitches. They want to feel invested in the content. If you show up with a completed project, you got trouble. Yeah, if somebody wrote, well, Netflix says come back when the film is complete. That is telling you goodbye. Right? If Netflix says to you, oh, come back when your film's complete, they're telling you goodbye. They're not going to take it when you get it complete. It sounds like no one can get content through besides established producers. Yeah, that's true. That unfortunately that's true. Is there room for emerging talent? Yes. Partner with existing producers. Find the anointed ones. What document should we present when? What disappeared? What document should we present when going to these platforms? At what stage should we pitch? Pitcher. Okay. When you pitch? When you pitch, you got to have actors and a director and you need a script. Start one. You need a script. I should have said this. You must have an actor and director attached. Do not wander into a streamer without an actor and director attached. It is a little tricky. I concede it is a little tricky. How do you get the actor and talent attached without getting the streamer? The answer is the anointed ones can do this. Okay. And this is why you must partner with the anointed ones, because the anointed ones can, without question, I do this all the time, pitch a project to the network, get them to say yes, and kind of talk to the talent first and say, hey, would you be interested? Talent kind of says yes. Go to the network and say streamer says yes, and now we go do our deal. You will not be able to do that without an anointed one. I guarantee it. What are my thoughts on 168K film deduction replacing 181? Yes, 168K will, what 168K says is you deduct the cost of the film on release, not during production. And I agree. I think, why bother with 181? It's a 1-year deferral. 168K gets you there. So yes. What's a budget range for VOD? Oh, there's no budget range. Are you doing a TV series? They love series, by the way. They just absolutely, they really are love series more than films. But for films, I mean, I sold The Irishman to Netflix. And it was $200 million by the time that film was done or over. So there's no upper range, and there's no lower range. It's the local language, foreign. For example, they'll do foreign language local stuff that they hope will work internationally, and they're so, at relatively low budget. Do letters of interest from talent and a director mean anything to the streamers? Yes. Yes, it does. If you can walk in with a letter of intent or letter of interest from a director and talent, that shows that you've got some interest in that. Yes, that will, without question, that will help you when you walk in and talk to a streamer. Absolutely. Is product and brand placement viable? Yes. Absolutely, product and brand placement, but don't just go for the product and brand placement. Get equity from them. Get the advertisers to put in cash, and they'll do it. And they'll do it absolutely. So get more than just a free product or a few bucks. Is the 10% or 50% premium total budget or above and below the line? Total. I view it as total budget. So we go in, when we have been successful in selling with 50% premiums on the total budget. It takes a little bit of creativity in terms of where costs are shoved into the budget and what are fees and what are costs. And so I will tell you, there's a bit of creativity there. Are there any agreement templates I would recommend? Yes. Use an LLC over an investment contract. Absolutely. And use short contract. Oh, hey, I want to warn you all. Do not do term sheets, deal memos, and letters of intent. Those are lame, half-baked documents that will end up in litigation. All you need to do is short, final agreements. And everything should be covered, and it can be short. All right. There's no reason why an agreement has to be long, but do not do deal memos, letters of intent, and these half-baked documents that Hollywood loves because what they're so, and it always says long form to follow. Don't do that. If there's something that needs to be said, say it. Every deal can be broken down into 3 things: money in, money out, and control. And if you think through those issues and if you cover them, a contract can be very short and sweet, and particular if you have control. And that's the key. I will do anything to get control. Does Netflix require you to have original content in 4K only? The so-called Netflix standard. Generally, the short answer is yes. And I apologize for scoffing. Theatrical. How do I see theatrical releases? Okay, I don't. I think the theatrical world, I think, is dead, but for the big budget films. And I should have said this early. Yeah, there's going to be Mission Impossible, and there's going to be Top Gun, and there's going to be Jurassic Park in the theaters. And it's going to go, by the way, 3D and with 3D sound, and seats will move, and it'll get a really high-end experience. That's where it's going. Below that, forget about it. You got a film that's less than $100 million. It is not, you're going to lose money at the theater. You're not, the whole theatrical deal is over, and just over and over and over. I've seen films just flop at you just cannot, the days of an independent film going out on theatrical and making $1 million bazillion is, in my opinion, is over. It's just not happening. So that's why it's become a VOD world. I have clients that are still trying for theatrical for low budget, and it's a disaster. I mean, it's just a complete, utter disaster. For a documentary, I had Netflix say that they wouldn't come in until rough cut, regardless of quality. The film fell apart due to changes and blah, blah, blah. Our documentary is different. Yeah, documentaries are a little bit different. That's a fair comment. If you've got a good low budget, if you've got a good documentary, you might, and it's good, and it's an interesting topic, you might be able to sell it after completion to a streamer. Our sales agent told us Netflix is not looking for new content for the next 6 months. That is not true. Netflix, because I'm selling stuff to them, they're in trouble. They've been overspending like crazy, and they're going to have to get their costs down, which means the budgets were going to have to come down. So reasonable cost, reasonable prices, yeah, still absolutely still buying. Is it a good idea to use crowdfunding websites? Crowdfunding is okay to raise equity, again, as I said, but only if you don't pay them in advance, you only go to accredited investors, and not to non-accredited. Would I pay an advance to a company? No. Would I pay an advance to a company negotiating a brand placement? No. I wouldn't pay an advance to anybody. I wouldn't pay an advance to my mother. And anybody who is claiming to raise money it's a fraud. I don't care whether it's for brand placement, equity, a distribution, something. Do not pay anyone in advance. There's way too much fraud going on in this industry. You do not want to be there. The one thing I will say, if you want to be added to a newsletter, you can email to me at smoore@ggfirm.com. And I'll answer any questions that you have. And if you want to be added to a newsletter I send out now and then, just smoore, MOORE @ggfirm.com. And it's been an honor to be here with everyone today.